just to let people trickle in, and then we'll get started.
Good morning. We're going to give this a 2-minute mark. Good morning. As everyone's getting settled on Zoom, I just want to say it's great to be here with everyone. And thank you so much for your very valuable time this morning. We're going to get started in about 90 seconds.
We could sing.
We can.
Yeah, or not. Ooh, it looks like it's going to be a nice day, though.
Yes. And even though this is a strange way to be in community with each other, it's still really great to be in community with everyone. So
it is. It's like, it's my new friends.
Yes.
Before all this, I always had my internet friends anyway, like Brene Brown and I make all my internet friends that I read their blogs. So they don't know they're my friends, but they're my internet.
That can be the title of your memoir. They didn't know they were my friends.
Exactly. I had all kinds of friends that didn't know it.
Good morning. We're about halfway to our registration numbers. I know not everyone's going to be signing on, but I'm just going to give it one more minute and we're going to go ahead and get started. We really want to honor everyone's time. Good morning, and I'm Dina Jensen. I'm the director of the Center for Nonprofit Leadership at California Lutheran University, and really happy to have everyone on today's call. Now I'm dawdling a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I'm going to say thank you, just profuse gratitude for all of you in the social sector doing really important work during this very demanding time. And many of you have reached out various different channels asking, like, what do we say? How do we communicate to our stakeholders, our donors, to the people who really matter in the community, the people we're seeking to serve? And there was only one phone call I could think of to make, and that was to Diane McKay. So she is a respected expert in the field of communication, public relations, and marketing, but she is also a community hero to many, working tirelessly to make the Central Coast the special place that it is. We set a very daunting task before Diane. We've got over 200 people registered for this morning's webinar, and we asked her to help nonprofit leaders think through our communication, outreach, and messaging in light of a global pandemic. And while many of us worked tirelessly through various fires, a mass shooting, none of us have ever been affected by something like this. And we're all grappling with how to tackle this most significant leadership challenge. This session was made possible through a collaborative partnership of capacity builders who care deeply about nonprofits in our region. The Center for Nonprofit Leadership is grateful beyond measure for the generous support from the Ventura County Community Foundation, the Santa Barbara Foundation, the Fund for Santa Barbara, the Nonprofit Resource Network of Santa Barbara, and our partners at Visionality, who have been hosting our Zoom services in support of today's learning community. A special thanks to Brianne Foster for making it all work. I'd also like to say a special note of thanks to the Center for Nonprofit Leadership Advisory Board and the leadership at Cal Lutheran for supporting us in bringing timely and relevant topics to bear during this unprecedented time. As with all of our work and all of our missions, it takes a lot of generous people underwriting sessions like this, making them no and low cost to our community. And for that, we're very, very grateful. A couple of housekeeping items before I hand it over to Diane. This session will be recorded, and we'll make the recording available via email and on social media channels after the fact. It usually takes a little bit of time for the file to be ready for prime time. We're going to invite you, because of the magnitude of attendees today, to pose your questions in the Q&A feature. And then if you run into any difficulties with Zoom in particular, you're welcome to use the chat box to pose those questions directly to Brianne. And Brianne, can I invite you to share the next slide? Oh, you're already on it. Okay. And finally, I'll also invite you to join us on our social media channels noted in the chat box. I'll be cutting and pasting those in just a second. Our electronic newsletter and our social media platforms are the best way to disseminate information as quickly as possible. And we hope that you'll take a moment to join us. As we know, many of the issues that we're all facing are unfolding moment to moment. So without further ado, Diane, thank you so very much for joining us this morning and for all you do for our nonprofit sector in the region.
Thank you very much for having me. It is really a pleasure. I most of all wish that I had some, you can go to the next slide. I actually wish I had something magic to say. I hope that just some of the things that we talk about today kind of remind you of the things that we've learned all along. Working with the Ventura County Community College District, working with businesses, both profit and nonprofit, for a really long time, gives me some perspective, but this really is, you can go to the next slide. This is, believe it or not, as much as we say it, it is unprecedented. It is, you know, we've never seen times like this. It's uncertain. I mean, I hate surprises. I don't like surprise parties. I don't like them for me. I don't like to give them. I don't like surprises. So you can imagine the depth of my displeasure with this surprise that we not only had again here in the Central Coast have something happen to us. We have had fires. I'm just waiting for, you know, the locusts, because now we have the plague, and it isn't just us. It is everybody in the world is facing this. So we don't get, as nonprofits, some of that natural sympathy, because everybody has their own problems to deal with across the spectrum, whether you're a for-profit business, a large business, a small business, it really doesn't matter. I don't know anybody that hasn't been touched by this. And so that truly makes it very uncertain and unpredictable and not easy to know how to go forward in that, because your demands are going to increase. There's going to be fewer resources. Those are just the facts and laying out things that you already know. I promise it won't all be like that. You're going to have limited volunteer capacity. I mean, many of your volunteers have their children at home with them unexpectedly. So they can't even do the, you know, the things that they've done in the past. And the changes happen every day. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I just don't want to listen to the radio. I don't want to watch the news briefing. I don't even if they promise me it's going to be good news, I don't trust them anymore. And so something's going to happen. And so we're all putting up with just the anxiety of the frequent changes in need. And so as we think about how we want to express this to our audiences and the people that we need to talk to, you know, we need to take a breath and internalize that anxiety, try and swallow it back for a minute to be the strength of the voice for our organizations. Next slide. And so I look at this one, Safe Passage Youth Foundation, when Tim Hagel was the chief of police in Thousand Oaks. He really launched a 3-pillar community policing plan to keep kids safe. And of course, it's become much different than it was. It's no longer just a homework center after school every day. It is trying to help those students get fed on the weekends, working with a park district and volunteers. And that's my daughter with the thumbs up there. We help make lunches on Saturdays. I mean, lots of things go on. But I think one of the things that has helped keep him focused is the message is the same, is we need to keep kids safe. And yes, the need has gone up. What it took to keep them safe is more food, more help, more people, more resources. But nothing in his pillars changed. He stuck with his 3 pillars. I'm on his board. When we had our board meeting, it was, we've got to keep kids safe. And that means making sure that they're not hungry, making sure that they're learning, and making sure that they're being taken care of. So just try and stick with what you know, and make sure you have the art of that in your introduction. Pillars are, you might meet somebody and get one chance to talk to them. And so when you do get a chance to talk to them, make sure that they know who you are and why you're of value to know. I would try to say my name again when I leave. In case you forgot, my name's Diane, because if they're like me, they did forget, because I often forget the names of people I meet. And try as I might, I just do. And you want to know why you're important, what value you might bring to them, and what your work is and the role that you play in it. So when I talk to someone, if I'm talking about Safe Passage, or if I'm talking about the community colleges, I want people to remember my name, where they can find me, and why they might need to know me down the road. And so that's a message, that's that first introductory message. Who are you? Why is it important to know you? So we really put that out there. Next slide. Another really kind of important in a time like this is to set realistic expectations. Before you can really effectively communicate with your audience, you need to really know who you are and be realistic about what you're going to be able to do. Someone might call and say, hey, can you double your capacity in this time? And you might be like thinking, no, I might have to cut in half what I'm able to do right now. And so taking the time with your board or with your staff, or even with yourself, to understand, what do you have? What are you capable of doing moving forward with the current support that you have? What are the projected donations and grant opportunities, if there are some? I mean, there are a lot more grant opportunities right now than there have been before, but they're federal level grants, state level grants, and a lot of competition for them. So, there's going to be a surge in increased need for at least 3 to 4 months, fingers crossed. And we all have to look towards that. And as we send our messaging out, make sure that we're really, again, clear and consistent, and that we have a procedure for vetting the requests that come into us, so that when we send our messages out, we're very clear about what we're going to need, and hope to be able to provide for the folks that need so much from so few. And I also think it's real important to remember where you are, not be tone deaf in a situation. Some examples, you're just in the wrong setting, it's the wrong time for someone, or you can feel in the first few minutes it's a bad fit. And so sometimes you just kind of need to take a step back to when you're talking to someone, and that's all part of setting those realistic expectations, whether it's with a donor or someone who is making an ask of you. The message that you need to portray is, it may not be a good fit, this may not be the right time, and how to politely move on, say thank you, it was so great meeting you, if I can find someone that might be able to help you out, I'll be sure and pass them your way. Have lots of business cards with you. Another thing that's great to have with you is a list of other services that might be helpful. I know I was talking to someone the other day, and they put in their food bags on the couple of days that they give out food, where folks can get food on the days that they don't. And so it's really getting more information out there and setting those expectations. So going to the next slide, when you communicate to your audiences, you really, again, you want to have clear expectations for your audiences. Like some, I know, just having gone through the CARES Act, a lot of people want to know the timing of that. How long is it going to take? There's nothing more frustrating than thinking you checked off a box and you're going to get $10,000 in 3 days. And in fact, nothing's going to happen for 3 weeks. And so you're checking your computer every day to see what's going to happen. So if you provide some clear expectations, nothing's going to happen for 3 weeks. You can check back with us in 3 weeks, and if you haven't heard anything. And then, you know, something that's for marketing at all times, this would be if I was sitting in a boardroom talking to someone in the best of times, is use consistent messaging across all platforms. Whatever it is that you're telling someone that you're going to feed, provide diapers for 2-year-olds to 4-year-olds, and that's what you do. And you want to make sure that that comes across on all your social platforms, whether it's a flyer that you give to someone else to give out, whatever it is, use consistent messaging across all platforms, who you are, your service area, how you can be reached. And again, and always trying to build for your future, what it is you want to provide for the community long-term, whether it's stability through education, stability through breaking through the glass ceiling, stability through art, whatever it might be, you want to use that consistent messaging across all, doesn't matter anywhere it is, even if it's just speaking about it. And then of course, providing transparency on how your nonprofit operates. Do you have a board? How much goes to, you know, the children or the adults or the special needs folks that you're helping? Are you helping families that are temporarily struggling? Are you helping families that you've helped for many, many years? How does it work? You know, Caneo Schools Foundation, they are there to help students for many, many years. They have provided Get Ahead summer school, and that's something that's been a great thing they're known for, and they are very transparent about how they do that. So making sure that you have, but so this year, how are they going to do it? It's going to be different than it's ever been before. So if they're going to have any classes with students in them, which probably they won't, I know at the colleges we do, we've put out procedures. Yes, there'll be physical distancing. Yes, there will be masks and gloves required. Yes, we're doing extra cleaning and using special cleaning procedures to make sure our buildings are safe. So all that transparent information needs to be out there for your folks that are coming to use your services. They want to know, nobody can really do anything if they don't feel safe. It's that hierarchy of needs of feeling safe. And so making people feel safe by the transparency of how your nonprofit works is the best start. And then of course, providing timely updates. Again, if someone, especially if you're waiting, if you're on the asking side and you're waiting for help, knowing when that help might arrive is so incredibly important in your messaging. We aren't going to be able to provide these grants until June. These are summer grants, or we're going to be providing these grants next week. Then the folks that are waiting for them know when to look. Again, back to the SBA and some of those loans, I know people were running to their computers every day to see, did their money come? Did they get their money? Because it was so poorly communicated. And all of the messaging said this is going to be fast, easy money, which people quickly found it wasn't. Some of them, the next messaging they heard was that they were out of money. And so what people really want to know is just, when can I expect to know something? And then even if on that day comes, you don't have the knowledge that you thought you were going to be able to provide, tell them that. Say, we thought we were going to have information today. We don't. Come back in 48 hours and we'll have another update for you. And that stops people from just that craziness of calling you, going on your website, and just the anxiety they feel that they haven't heard anything, because I think we all know that just the tremendous anxiety that people are feeling right now. So anything you can do in your messaging to lower that anxiety, I think helps people a great deal. Next slide, please. I think, you know, your personal message too is really important, so that, you know, the perception that you can deliver, so someone knows you, they've worked with you before. So you really need to get across when you meet with someone, whether it's, you know, I meet with someone because like I still think that someday we're going to talk to people in person again, but whether you meet them this way or over the phone or via email, they need to kind of feel like they can remember who you are, have a perception that you can deliver, and again, a belief to help others. And it goes back to that anxiety that your messaging plays to reduce the anxiety. And this is for your donors and your supporters, as well as the folks that you're helping, the people that are struggling, that maybe for the first time they've had to ask for help. So that's truly a vulnerable place to be. And so you have to kind of come with a whole heart that makes them feel like you really are there to help them. And so by staying true to your mission that folks can see you've been following for a long time. And like Conejo Community Outreach is another, and Jess is here with me, who she disappeared. But I don't know, Jess, if you want to talk a little bit about Conejo Community Outreach and what you do and what you've seen change.
Yeah, so, you know, in speaking with partnerships, the thing that we found is through Conejo Community Outreach, we run a year-round community diaper bank. And so families can submit for assistance once a month, and we'll put together a diapers and wipes package. And, you know, back in late February, Safe Passage Youth Foundation had reached out to us, and they had a very urgent need for diapers. And so the first week, we got them about 4,000 diapers to disperse, because they disperse lunch each day, and so they would pair that with diapers as well to these families. They serve roughly about 200 families, some of our most vulnerable families. And, you know, what we found was, in speaking with Tim, who works with Safe Passage, that they were going to have this need continue for, you know, that wasn't a one-time need. This was something that weekly we were going to need to figure out how to provide these families with, you know, roughly 1,700 to 2,000 diapers on a weekly basis. And, you know, for Conejo Community Outreach, we were in this position where we already have a pretty stable base of people who consistently rely on our nonprofit monthly. And we had to kind of really debate how we would be able to meet this demand and, or this need, I should say, and also needs from the county. And we had different departments coming to us whose families used to be able to get resources from other organizations that were also now closed because of COVID. And so what ended up working for us with Safe Passage was we kind of created this partnership where Safe Passage is a little bit of a larger organization than we are, and they get more grant money than we do from different funding sources. And so in order to be able to continue to help them, we now have this partnership where we order all the diapers for them, we store them, and we package everything, and we get a small part of that reimbursed so that we can continue to fulfill that need, which is something they don't specialize in. They don't have a whole process set up for diapers regularly, have nowhere to store the diapers regularly, and don't really know the price points that they should be looking for. So we can take all of that on, and then we also get some of that reimbursement back, so we're not completely exhausting all of our resources for this new channel of support. So in that way, it helps us because we're able to help Safe Passage with the diapers, and then Safe Passage in return is able to help us continue helping them. It's a really strong partnership. It means we'll be able to help them, and then also keep in mind our families who regularly depend on us, because we certainly didn't want to make decisions that would impact our stability long term.
The next slide. And the next slide is really talking to that about balancing the message and managing expectations. Because you really can, in Jess's situation, as she said, they have families that depend on them and have been, and then all of a sudden there's this great need that has come in. And so it's in building the partnership, she was still able to manage expectations, that this was not something that she could just take on these extra, you know, 200-300 people, that it's actually grown from 200 the first week to 300 to 384. And so managing those expectations in your messaging is important, because you need to keep going and people need to know what you can do, what you are asking for money for, and who you're serving, and how long you've been doing it, that you're not just a COVID nonprofit, that you're an ongoing nonprofit, and that, you know, no doubt you're struggling because of this increased need and less people to support you. And so it's, you know, we need to avoid the entitlement. Well, we've always done this. We've always gotten this grant. We've always done this, you know, or the easy out. We don't do that. I'm not suggesting, because I think those are both poor messaging points. And I think it kind of goes without saying, but I also think there needs to be a balance with, there are so many in need. I'm not sure that, you know, I might be the next person asking for help next. So there's nothing wrong with having some uncertainty that you're out there doing your best to help, but in your messaging that, you know, that if you help more than you're able, you're gonna kill the goose that laid the golden egg. And so you need to make that balance in your message, so that folks understand that you don't have unlimited resources. Next slide. And I wouldn't be in marketing if I didn't talk to you about, in messaging, you still always need to be true to your brand, staying in line with your message, staying in line with your mission, and considering all the decisions you make and how they reflect on your brand. You know, we look at some of our big nonprofits that some don't even think of necessarily as nonprofits, like Ventura County Credit Union, who is this tremendous resource in the community, and they provide through their foundation and through the credit union a lot of help for a lot of organizations, but they're also a nonprofit financial institution themselves, and they have to stick with their brand, and they have a board that manages that. Food Share, another great big organization that is having to fill so much more need than they did just 6 months ago. And you know, Monica White and Jennifer Caldwell are working so hard to not let anybody down, and, you know, working and working and working and trying to stretch every dollar and remind everyone that they're there all the time. And that Food Share brand is really well known. If you think of, you know, the first place you tend to go towards, our 3 colleges all have food pantries, and they work with Food Share for the food insecure students. And so keeping your brand out there, being solid to your brand continues to be important. It may be that you provide mental health services, and again, sticking true to that brand. We know what Casa Pacifica does, you know, we know what Interface does, we know what Make-A-Wish does. All of these nonprofits continue to be important. They continue to need to foster their brand with their messaging, and they need to foster continued trust. And the donors that are giving to them need to know that these organizations are continuing to meet the need. They're continuing to do whatever it takes. And in some cases, I've heard it's just not sleeping at all to meet the need these days. And, you know, in a lot of cases, your regular volunteers aren't there to help you anymore. Even in the hospitals, you know, we have nonprofit hospital, Community Memorial. At any of our hospitals, their volunteers aren't there. So they don't even have the regular folks there helping their systems run. So everyone is under this strained situation. And yet, being true to your brand and being kind in your messaging and kind in delivery, because your message isn't just what you say and put out there. Your message is your volunteer delivering something. Your message is the person standing there giving something to someone else, and how they go about doing it. That's why that elevator speech is, you know, so important. And we'll get to that. But really, really sticking with your brand, really sticking with what you do, and keeping that clear in all your messages is going to be important as you go forward. And don't rush something out, you know, think everything through, because believe it or not, this is going to end at some point. So make sure you've stayed true to who you are, so that when we come out of this, you come out of it and you still have your brand and your strategy and your underpinning that you've worked for all these years in place. Next slide. So when you do get someone to go to your website or go to your social media, make it easy. Look at this, how great this is. Ventura County Community Foundation, donate now. It is right there. Or if you need information, community support related to COVID-19, it's right there. More information, it's right there. It's super easy to find. The census, get counted, it's right there. And then Caneo Community Outreach. And then for safe passage, emergency relief to kids, it's what is it? It is right there in front of you. Make it really easy for someone to help you and find out what it is help looks like to you. Because help may look like food donated, help may look like just funding, help may look like volunteers, help may look like a lot of things. And so you have to make sure that you make that easy for the folks that you run into to find out, so that in your messages, you haven't muddled it by making it hard. Next slide, please. And so I'm, sticking on, some things are still the same. Some things are still the same. And these are the pillars that we build on any marketing program. Make it clear what solution it is that you provide. And that's, again, in a profit or a nonprofit world. In this case, it's nonprofit. What is it that you do? We provide news. We provide, with KCOU, you provide news and entertainment. If it's food share, you provide food for those that don't have it. Whatever it is that you might provide, grants for folks. Our 3 colleges all have foundations that provide scholarships for students, which many people are going to need. So make it clear what you provide. And then have a very specific call to action. So make it real easy to donate or to ask for help. And you still need to have that elevator speech. And I mean it. Have one, learn it, say it with ease, because sometimes you get about 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes of someone's time. And if you don't want to waste it, you certainly want, when you get that person and they say, how are you? Don't say, oh my God, I'm so busy. Say, wow, I'm glad you asked. People are, we have had to feed twice as many families as we had to feed at this time next year, or the expectation compared to the 2008 recession is expected to be twice as much, and or whatever it is. Take that time to have your elevator speech on who you are, what a call to action is, and incorporate a sense of urgency that they actually make that call to action is really, really important, because otherwise you've taken 2 incredibly important minutes where you had somebody's time to talk to them and talked about how busy you are and, or, what a tough time everyone's having. And I think everyone kind of knows that. So you've got to figure out that quick speech, what it is you do, how you help them, where you help them, and how they can help you. And have a stack of cards in your back pocket, an outside pocket of your purse, so you can quickly and easily hand them your card and say, call me. And if you can try it, if they try to get their card from them, so you can follow up, say, hey, I met you, follow up within 24 hours. I met you, really excited we had a chance to meet. Here's a way, I've been thinking about it. Here's a way I think we could help. And you know what? It might bring you $5. It might bring you $5,000. You just don't know who that person is that you're going to meet. So always be ready with that, with those same principles that we've been talking about for a long time. I think things flashing at me. Do I have any questions?
So Diane, you have a question I just picked up in the chat box. That's what's a good alternative to business cards given social distancing?
I think probably, social distancing. I think the alternative is an easy URL to say, search for foodshare.org, or to really have a clear URL is probably the best, because people don't remember phone numbers and no one has the 1-800 telephone numbers anymore. So I think having a clear URL is the best way. And I'm trying really hard to follow Governor Newsom's and call it physical distancing, because as we've seen today, we're still trying to be social. So we're going to call it physical distancing. And so without having a business card. And a couple of things that I've done is just made it bigger and held it up so that someone can, you know, instead of having a small business card, having an 8x10 card that I carry and hold up, and someone can write it down even from a safe physical distance. And you do the same. You can write on the back of yours, and then you know on the back of your card how many people you met that day and how many follow-ups you need to do that day.
We also have a suggestion to use your LinkedIn profile as your electronic business card, because it's easy to remember our names.
Absolutely. More and more, I've noticed just prior to this, I've had over the last year a lot of conversations about LinkedIn. I really feel that even though Instagram kind of took over social media, I said, I still think for business and for getting things done, LinkedIn is the place. And I'm a real believer in it. And more so than ever now, businesses and nonprofits in this physical distancing world, that is how they're staying in touch. I've made more LinkedIn posts in the last 3 months than I probably have in the last 3 years put together, sharing, reposting. You know, Twitter's still fun and Facebook is still fun, but I still find that that business connections, and whether that's for the college or for one of the nonprofits I work for or for my day job in marketing, LinkedIn is the place to go. So I think that's a fantastic idea. Is I'm on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. And just like with me, I have a funky, I spell Diane with 2 N's. I kind of throw it out there. Remember, I spell Diane with 2 N's. And so hopefully they'll remember that. And then you can also go find them, write down as much as you know. We're all getting pretty good at internet stalking. So I think you can find most people on LinkedIn if they want to be found. So good question. Good suggestion. Okay. So next slide, we're still in the nonprofit business, and we still have to make the ask. You would think not. You would think in a time like this that people would be sitting at home and thinking, what extra do I have, and who can I give it to, and how can I give it? And some people are in fact doing that. They are, just as a matter of course of who they are as families, they know that there's a lot of need out there, whether it's in their own family or just in general. They're looking to see who needs help and how to go about it. So that's why it's so important that you stay out there. As much as it is an investment, social media is not that expensive. Redoing and cleaning up your website is not that expensive. So kind of be transparent on your website and in your social media about the increased demands on your organization and on you personally. I mean, it is a time that you can personalize it. Just, you know, I'm working night and day. My staff is working night and day. You know, the people that we work for are working 2 jobs, and be transparent about the increased need and the demand for the resources and why it is a worthy thing to be doing. Acknowledge the financial challenges that many people are facing, that not everyone has money to give right now, but we always talk time, talent, and treasure. Maybe you can't give treasure right now, but you can give time, or you can give talent. I'm telling you, all those kids that got sent home, some of them, you know, if you could do art, you know, an art program for them and drop off some art kits. Nan from Art Trek, I see her putting together art kits for students all the time that no longer can come to Art Trek. So there are a lot of things out there. So just, again, acknowledge that there are challenges, but people still feel better if they're doing something to give back. So find what that may be. They may be able to help you with your social media. Maybe they're your designated Twitter watcher, and to make sure that you get positive responses on Twitter or positive responses on LinkedIn, repost things, give someone a chance to do something so that they feel good about it. Again, because some people are facing challenges they've never faced before. I mean, Disneyland and Disney World have been closed for months. I mean, Disneyland alone laid off 43,000 people. I mean, the numbers are truly staggering. And so we as nonprofits, it's up to us to also make the people that can't help in the way they used to find a new way to feel good about helping. And then be honest about the expectations from your donors. We also know there's people out there that can still donate, but you know, be fair and be honest and say, I know everybody's coming to you. Here's why I think we should float to the top. I know you've always given to, you know, this group in the past, but maybe you could consider 2 gifts. Again, here's why. But, you know, if they say no, they say no. And, you know, you don't want to alienate them. They will remember you if you were polite. And maybe then when they figure out that they are going to give a few more dollars, you'll be there in hand. So as you think about how you're messaging and talking with those donors, like I said, that you know that they can dig deep and have a little more than some. Everybody else knows that too, if you know it, unless they happen to be a really close friend and they're secretly rich, or they just won the lottery last weekend and everyone hasn't found out yet. For the most part, you know, you just kind of got to go easy on that. But once again, provide a really clear understanding of why you need the funds and what they're going to be used for. This weekend, instead of 250 students to feed, we have 384. And we are so lucky that our school district feeds them all their meals during the week. And on the weekends, we step in with Park District help and Red Cross help and feed them on the weekends. And this is exactly what we need. We need you, McDonald's, to provide us 350 burgers for $1 a piece or for free. And you know what? Sharky's, McDonald's, some other places have come through with us for those meals because we provided a really clear, this is what we need, this is when they're going to be used, this is how they're going to be used. So that's, you know, that's just the most powerful message is always immediacy of what you're going to be doing with the funds and how you're going to help with them and how they're going to go to work immediately, especially at a time like now when so many needs are so immediate. It would sound great. I'm giving $1 million to figure out the antibodies. Well, I'd rather say I'm giving $1 million and I'm going to feed this many families that have never ever had to ask for help before. And we're going to do it in secret and they're not going to know. I think I'd feel better about, you know, feeding the families than going into the black hole of the antibodies, because that's for big pharma and they're going to figure that out. So next slide. So getting back to basics, there is going to be a time, I know no one knows when that is, but there will be a time that in 3 months, in 6 months, that things begin to go back to normal. And I think that everyone should start thinking and having a 3 to 6 month short-term strategy to address those needs happening now. And then they also need to have that strategy for when they start to feel like when we're coming out of it, and messaging that reaches each of your audience. So that's what I'm going to go back to some of the more marketing fundamentals. Who are your audience? You have your clients that you help. You have your community partners that you help with, that you've this dance with for several months and almost feel like you're family with those community partners. And then of course you have the people that donate to you. And so you want to help them make the transition of when, and again, none of us know when it's going to be, but boy, we keep hoping it's soon. But when we've flattened out the curve and when we start to see the other side, there's still going to be tremendous need because, oh, guess what? That's when public money is going to get cut. That's when there's going to be 20% cuts to our school districts. And then all of a sudden the schools are going to be knocking on your door because they're not going to have money for AIDS or all kinds of things. But trust me, that's coming next. I mean, that's just me, my doomsday machine. I can't help myself. But I know as a college board trustee that we are already looking at, you know, what do we have in emergency reserves? And how are we going to face what we know is coming? Because in saving the private sector right now, by pushing back taxes and all the great messaging that our federal government and state governments are putting out to save the private sector and businesses now and feel good and vote, it's going to come from somewhere, and the taxes that aren't paid are going to come out of it, be taken out of education and public services. I absolutely guarantee it. Most of us are lucky living in Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Ventura County that have decent surpluses and rainy day funds, but boy, those go like that. I mean, the 22 billion in rainy day funds that our state have, it'll be gone in a blink. And so start to look at what you're going to be talking about coming out and who's going to need to help them then, because it is going to shift. There will be a shift in who needs the help as we come out of this. And so look at the marketing vehicles and outlets that are going to be appropriate for those messaging. You know, think about how your website might change. You know, as we come out of this has been a really dark time. Are you going to want to brighten up your website and brighten up your social media and brighten up your the messaging in your, and both visual and visual in what you send out by email? Because we really do want to come out of this and thank everybody, because we all are going to have such grateful hearts when we come out of this, and none of us are going to be the same. I don't know anybody wealthy enough that isn't going to be hurt, that their 401k isn't going to, it didn't have to get touched or borrowed from or dive into it just a little bit to save your small business, or have borrowed money from a family or friend. Lucky enough to get money from the SBA, but some of that has to be repaid. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. And so as you look at your strategy of both finishing out this COVID time and then coming out of it, you've got to change with it. And again, trust me, it's going to just be a change at first, because the wonderful teachers that made this quick transition to teach online from teaching in the classroom, they're going to be asked to take pay cuts. And the nurses and the frontline doctors and everyone that's standing between us and the virus, well, the hospitals, because we did such a good job at flattening the curve, the hospitals are probably going to be in need, probably all of them, because they did what they did. So just remember that there's still going to be competition for the dollars out there, but just in a different way as we crawl out of this virus. So that's just my kind of prediction, my crystal ball for the future of what it's going to take to come out of this. And again, I'm not asking you to change who you give to and all of a sudden give to teachers and hospitals, but just recognize that there are people who do. And Conejo Schools Foundations that gives to students now, they may be helping out teachers in the future, because that's what's needed for classrooms and best for our community as a whole. And again, I think I mentioned it before, next slide, about becoming a resource. Sometimes you can't provide everything to everybody, but boy, you can know who does. And if someone calls you because they need food on a Sunday for their grandma in Ventura or Santa Barbara, and you don't do that, it would be so great if you knew who did, whose Meals on Wheels are providing that support for seniors in Santa Barbara, and you can give them the name, the email, the phone number. So share your resources with as many people as you can. This is the one great thing that we're all sitting in front of our computers all day, because I've gotten a lot better about filling in all my contacts, emailing folks, looking at more things than I used to. And so I think that it's a really good time to make sure you know what everybody else does and be like, gosh, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you provided diapers and wipes and formula. I thought you just did this, or I thought you provided clothing, or whatever it might be. Some of the services might not stay. I mean, I know right now we've got hotels that have homeless veterans in them and things like that, that we may not be able to sustain those things going forward. It sure would be nice if we could, but everyone's going to have to look at what they can do, what's sustainable. But really becoming a resource of resources, I kind of think I became that a long time ago, because I get a lot of calls of, do you know somebody who does this? And I often do, or I have someone to call, and you can always call our legislators, Henry Stern's office, Jackie Irwin's office, Monique Lamone's office, Hannah Beth Jackson's office, or however those shake out in November. But you can always call them and they're there to help you. But as a nonprofit, as an organization, it is so great if you can be that resource too, because it's a way you can grow people. It can become part of your message and part of your identity of who you are. Is, I know they don't do this, but they know everybody in town. So call them, call Betsy. She knows everybody. She does Alante food, but she also teaches at the community college and she's a school board trustee. She knows absolutely everybody. Call her. So I would absolutely have your Rolodex. How old am I? Have your computer contacts ready, maybe sort by what they do and make it really easy for you to be a resource for organizations to help out. And lastly, as we're coming up on the hour so that I have plenty of time for questions, I would not be doing any of us a favor if I didn't throw up something about the census. I know everyone has heard about it. Lots of people have been distracted. But if you're doing any events in the next couple of weeks and you have a hot spot in the computer and you can let people do the census right then and there if they have their number, or they can, call in. There's a lot of ways to do it. If we get counted, it's going to be more important than ever coming out of this COVID-19, making sure that we maximize the federal funds that we get for education, for law enforcement, for emergencies, for roads, for you name it. This is our chance once every 10 years to count everybody. It doesn't matter if they're a 1-day-old baby or a 101-day-old senior. If they are living in your address, you count them on your census form. The my2020census.gov has tons of information on it, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir with this, but it's sometimes easy to get overwhelmed. And this is the crux of it. This is where the rubber meets the road all the time, not just in a tragic situation. How we do the census now is what it's going to look like 5 years from now. We don't get to fix it. We don't get another chance to fix this till 2030. So if there's any way within your organization as we come in these last few weeks of the census, please help out if you can. And with that, I will open it up to any questions, and I will look through my PowerPoint to see what I missed, because I always miss things in a PowerPoint.
Terrific. We don't have any questions in the Q&A pose just right now, but I'm going to go ahead and welcome any questions. This is 30 minutes of expert counsel from Jessica and Diane. So I would really encourage all of my colleagues to take full advantage of this by posting any questions or posing a communication or public relations challenge that you're facing right now.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be about messaging. It can be anything now.
So Diane, I'll lob you one from our perspective. There's a number of us who are in intermediary roles where we are helping the other helpers, and there's always a knee-jerk reaction to, well, we better stay in the background and allow the food banks to engage the donor community. Can you talk a little bit about, just kind of sequencing and throttling all of our various messaging, particularly if we're more of a behind the scenes mission?
And there is that, again, if you look at the hierarchy of needs, you do want people to be fed. And so you do kind of throttle back and say, all right, I want people to be fed, but as I said, coming out of this, you still need to be there. The expectation is that you're going to be there. You're the Center for Nonprofit and Learning, and people are going to expect you to still be providing the best resources, the newest and best learning. And so you can't seed all of it. You certainly throttle back and seed those emergency services. Where can people get emergency testing? Where can people get food to eat tonight? Clothes on their children's back, I get it, but there are also ongoing needs. You know, all of you, you're here for a reason. And so don't ever forget that reason and make sure that you're still there and still promoting yourself in that space, so that when all this is behind us someday, that you're there and people thank you for sticking with them and providing them what they needed during this time.
Thank you, Diane. There were a couple of my colleagues who are in similar positions who also were about to ask that question. So thank you for asking that. Another question, I've got one from Bev. What's the best way to maximize or stretch a dollar? Is it better to give a larger sum to one organization or give some to many?
Oh, wow. That is always a
This is a little existential question.
Yeah, the Solomon-like question. I think that it really depends, where your heart is. I tend to say give your dollar to one organization and then give some time to the other, if you can do both. But we always say every little bit helps. If you can change one child's life, if you can feed one child, but there is so much need out there right now. I'm really trying to focus on a couple of things on what I can do, and then really be a help, with my time and talent to the rest, and then kind of limit my treasure, my dollar giving to a couple of places where I can see it make a difference. I don't know, Jess, you may have a different thought on that.
No, I think that's fair. I think too, it depends on the nonprofit. Some nonprofits benefit from a little bit larger of a donation so they can get their costs down, especially if they are providing resources like diapers or like food, for example. When you're buying in bulk, knowing what money you have up front helps you buy more. So then in theory, you can serve more people. But certainly it's hard in this time to pick and choose. But I tend to be like Diane. I try and find a few things where I know I can really put my all into it, as opposed to trying to give each different area 5% of my time. It seems to be a little bit more effective to really choose and find your passions and try and make that difference there, because there's likely somebody else who has a different passion and is already making that bigger impact for a different organization in the same way you might be for where your heart is.
And sometimes I might tell a friend, I'm going to give to food share, and they'll be like, okay, well then I'm going to give to to Casa Pacifica, and because they both need, and then that way, so talking about it with your friends kind of gives you an idea that if a lot of your friends are giving to one, that might help you make your choice to give to another.
So we have a pretty specific question here from Ray. Working on a leadership curriculum for fathers to build their relationships with their children. Any specific ideas on marketing points or taglines?
I'm never fast at taglines, but the marketing points, all right. Some people are great at taglines. I'll think of them all tonight in the middle of the night and then email me tomorrow. But I think for engaging fathers, they relate to, especially if I look at my own husband, my dad and stepdad and brothers and my 3 grown sons, they relate to pictures more than words. And so I think videos of showing a father doing something with their child, and even if they don't do it quite right, the diaper's on backwards, or they're flinging rice cereal at each other, but they're having fun doing it. Yes, the mom's going to have to clean it up, but the dad is engaging with the child. And so, showing a dad helping, not just with math homework, because we don't want to embrace some of those stereotypes there. The dads help with math and mom is going to help with art. But we want to show dads really engaging with their kids, and what a great opportunity it is to take them for a drive. I have one of my co-trustees, Josh Chancer, posted, right when physical distancing. And so he took his kids for this long drive out in the back country of Ventura County and just saw some beautiful sights with his kids. And I think of those kind of things of really moving and showing dads the things that they can do specifically. And so I would think, what are dads, you don't want to say dads are better than moms, but, ask dad for help and show them why dad may be, and I don't know what this organization does. I might be able to help a little more if I knew what the organization does, and feel free to use that email and Ray and let me know, and we can brainstorm a couple of things for dads. But I do think that visual somehow works better than the written message with dads. It's just been my experience.
I also think treating, I think getting away from some of those stereotypes, like you said too, like, and whatever in messaging and images you use, to respect the dad as an equal parent, and not, I think sometimes there's always a joking narrative when you see a dad with his kids, that there's someone who's going to write in and say, oh, did you have to babysit your kids tonight? And think that's kind of a cute comment, as though the dad kind of comes in when it's convenient and swoops out. But in this case, I think, there really are a lot of dads who are very hands-on and just as much dedicated parents. And I think that is still plays a really important role in messaging, is giving dads that respect and acknowledgement that they are, that they're not the babysitter, so, oh, is your wife going to have to help you after this? Like, I think that will help resonate as well as you're kind of building out your resources and messaging.
And agreed that it's also, it may be dad that lost his job. And so dad needs to feel really good about what he's doing with his time, and that it's one of the most valuable times that they'll never get back. My own husband didn't work when Jackson and Bennett were, I want to say 3 to 7, and he built stuff with them. He did all kinds of really fun things with them. And looking back, they were a little tougher years on us financially, but we wouldn't give those years back for anything. And he was their go-to guy, not just for building things, but for dinner and making him a snack. I was not, and it was a good thing. It worked out really well.
So I've got a question here from Shakira. What should be the top 3 or 4 points for a current communication build out? I know you touched on it a bit, but possibly reiterate through the lens of collaboratives, networks, and initiatives to clarify further if you're not necessarily a direct service agency.
Again, if you're not a direct service agency, be very clear what it is you do. And again, I go to the elevator speech, recognizing how saturated everybody is right now with this messaging. Try and set yourself apart, whether in language or, we'll be here in 2025 and still need you, or whatever it might be. But I think you need to, in those 3 steps, let people know that you're going to be around in 2025, because that's the type of organization that you are, that you're worthy of the time, talent, and treasure, and that you're also patient. Because I think if that patience comes through in your messaging, they're going to know that you're kind, that you're looking at this in a holistic manner, of your community and the larger community, that there are a lot of people hurting right now. And I think the more that we can, as nonprofits all together, know that we're all in this for the right reasons, and not one of us, sometimes there is a greater need in one than another in that moment in time. Like if it's blood drive day and it's not blood drive day tomorrow, well, if someone says, what can I do today? Send them to the blood drive. And then tomorrow, send them to food sorting or whatever it may be. So it's, I think, again, understanding the relevance of where you fall and having other resources to send them to if it doesn't fit in what you do. And then really having that final bullet of, because we're still going to be here for the next 20 years helping, whether it's adults, with disabilities or whatever it might be, that aren't going to go away.
So Diane, there's a question about frequency, how often we should update our donors and email followers. Any sense of just the traffic?
Donors is if it's truly just a thank you and not another ask. If it's just a thank you, I know you're not allowed to cough anymore in this world. You can't. It's like coughing and sneezing, everybody runs away from you. But I would say if it's really truly a thank you, you're just calling to advise your donors. Here's how we're doing. This is how many families we've helped. Thank you so much. I would say donors can, that they almost can't hear that enough. They could hear that weekly or twice a week. We fed 384 kids this weekend. Thanks so much for your help. If it's an ask, I think you have to be, again, in the not being tone deaf. If this person just gave you what was a stretch gift for them, then you better thank them for a while and wait. It may be 6 months before you ask them again. That's where I think, a lot of us have large donor bases, donor databases. You really have to know how to sort them so that you don't send out a tone deaf email, because those are hard to get when you have really stretched to give of your time, talent, or treasure, of any of those things, and you don't feel like it was appreciated. There's a saying on the other side that I've heard: always grateful, never satisfied. You don't want to fall into that category.
So there's a question about writing style. Since there's always competition for supporters' time, would you comment on writing styles for emails? Should we lay out our full argument or be more concise? And I think you also talked a little bit about storytelling and visuals.
Yeah, I do think storytelling is really important. And I think in an email, you want to give this quick, almost bullet point, and give them that chance, click here for more on this. Like if you do 3 different things, we do homework help, we provide snacks, and we provide after school care, for example. And you put those 3 down, you show really nice, pictures of each one, and then read more. And so someone can click on it to read more for the one that resonates with them, but they can see the 3 primary things that you do and give them the opportunity to click into the one that they like, that is most intriguing to them. And then of course, if they go into the first one, make sure they can still go into the second and third one, that they're always available, linked together. But I think the language should be short and concise, and but never just words. I'm telling it's been seen in Facebook and so many times that Facebook posts without a photograph just don't get read as often as those with the photograph. And so I think we learn a lot from that. We're social beings that way, in that pictures draw us in, videos draw us in. So if you could do something short, couple words, and then give them the opportunity to click in if they want more detail.
Fantastic. We've got a question from Nikki. So TO Art's main programs were presenting shows, bringing kids to the theater and supporting local theatrical arts groups, none of which we can do right now. We're working on alternative digital strategies right now. For now, we're maintaining relationships with donors, and I'm unsure about whether it would be appropriate to do more than that, meaning how do we ask for donations when what we're doing is not frontline work?
Hi, Nikki. And I think enough people understand what you do and how important the arts are, and that you need to be there when this is over. You're one of those that we're still going to be here in 2025 and in 2030, and we do still need to be here. And so building up a message that is, we're going to, whenever it is you find out, whether it's an online play. I've seen some really cute things with getting kids on Zoom in each of their houses and putting together, having them read plays. I'm sure you're the most creative person I know, so I'm sure you'll come up with something. But do that. But I would still stick with that, that last message, that you acknowledge that your need is not as great right now, but that you need to survive, because the expectation is you are going to be there in 2025 and providing the arts for the students and for the kids and adults that we expect and have come to expect from you. And so I don't think that you can just cede that expectation and say, hey, we don't need anything right now, because otherwise you'll cease to exist. And we still want to land on our feet from this thing. And there are still many, many people out there that believe that healing is through the arts. And we are all going to heal in our own way, but many of us are going to heal through the arts. And so I would focus on that as we all heal together, that you're going to play a big role in that.
So I'm going to combine the next two questions because they're both very similar, and that's about standing out when there's a lot of social media congestion, married with people experiencing information fatigue right now.
I'm going to let Jess is much better at social media than me, so I'm going to throw that one to Jess first.
Well, it's interesting. I think it depends on what social media platforms you use too. That might make a difference. And this is just for example, you know, my nonprofit, we've always stuck to just Facebook and even rarely Instagram. We're just volunteer based, so we don't really necessarily have a huge capacity to be managing a lot of platforms. But recently I noticed, being on Twitter myself, how much the community here tends to engage on Twitter. And so I launched a Twitter for our nonprofit, and that has actually seen a lot more engagement and generated donations from people who had never heard of us. So one thing I would say in terms of standing out is sometimes it's just a matter of taking stock of what platforms you're actually on and where your audiences really might be that you didn't necessarily consider. Diane spoke about this a little bit, but certainly visuals are impactful right now. And I know that we always tend to do without thinking, oh, this is a great photo opportunity. But when you can, and even if you're working with other organizations, you know, and they're coming to pick something up or whatever the case is, try and get a photo, try and have something visual. Try and share the successes. People like tangible numbers and things that they can hold on to. And this actually goes more toward an ask than just in general standing out. But I've noticed when you're hoping to secure some additional support, a lot of times people want to know how their donation is going to impact you. And without that knowledge, they're less likely to support you because they can't visualize it. And so, for example, one of the things that we do year round as an annual event is a Thanksgiving event. And we would say $50 guarantees a family a Thanksgiving package. And we found that was really helpful for people who were like, should we donate $20? We don't know. And so they would hesitate. If you're like me and I go to an organization and it looks like something I want to support, if I don't understand what makes an impact in my donation, I end up hesitating and thinking I need more time before I make a donation. So in terms of using your social in that way too, that this amount of money will provide this amount of diapers on a given week, or you know, tagging organizations you're working with, you know, sharing different resources. That's just how you stand out. Be an organization, to Diane's point earlier, that not just of your own resources, that people can also come and learn about other resources in the community, nonprofits they may not have known before, because, you know, then you're becoming a trusted partner in not just your area of expertise, but and also connecting people to different nonprofits in the community, that they can find more comprehensive support when you all work together. Thanks. And different platforms are different. You know, Twitter tweets fly, they fly by. So you can always tweet more actively. Facebook, you know, I think right now in this time frame, I think posting daily is fine. If you have something to post daily, I don't think that's inundating your bases. It's not, as long as you're not asking for money every single day. And it's more sharing your efforts and sharing the difference in need and sharing the different partnerships. That's completely appropriate. And same with Instagram. But
sharing the wins. Sharing the wins are always great.
And the positivity. You know, people need to feel, there's a lot of bad news right now too. So sometimes just really connecting community and giving people that hopeful outlook that there are, you know, look for the helpers, right, is what everybody is saying, and showing that and you know, kind of getting away from that doomsday feeling, sometimes through your platforms, can also just be a helpful place. And that actually goes back to Safe Passage. They do kind of a COVID-19 hero of the day. And so Safe Passage will highlight an organization or an individual that really made a big impact that day. And so it just becomes a nice daily relief from some of the other negativity to be able to go and learn that, you know, Lazy Dog donates milk every week to these families, or whoever it is. It's just a different way to kind of connect and help with your overall social media, I think.
So we got a question here from Linda. Our organization was in the middle of a 25 million matching grant campaign with the state of California for the development of affordable housing. How would you message that today when it's still needed today, but will very much be needed in the coming year? Does the message change?
I mean, it changes a little in the sense that housing more than ever, the fact that there are those homeless living in hotels, I think that underscores more than ever that affordable housing is so necessary. So it's drawing that connection that they might be in a hotel today, but we're working with the state of California on a long-term solution so that that's never an answer again. And we all know that probably we're not going to cure homelessness in our lifetime, but to be making an effort of that size, you can connect it to the Motel 6 that's full of veterans right now. You can connect it to the homeless that we're trying to, you know, they're putting in hospital shelters just to try and make sure they're okay. And I think there are ways to make that connection that that these are needs that aren't going to go away, and that the stronger that we make our underpinning and our base, the better equipped we are for the next thing, which I think it's locusts or an earthquake, because that's the only thing we haven't had in the last 3 years. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be locusts or an earthquake. So, you know.
The things we have to look forward to.
Yeah. I do really think that because homelessness has still been such a big part of this, and how close, what we've learned from this is how close to homelessness so many people are. They don't have the savings. I mean, throughout America, families just don't have the savings. And so I think that an organization that's looking towards a long-term solution has a really good message as well.
Sure. Well, speaking of celebrating wins, there's just a comment in the Q&A right now. I love your input. We're a long-term systems change network, so you hit the nail on the head. Karen Escalante Dalton has a question about, can you talk a little bit about how to craft a strong elevator pitch?
I think it's what I said real quickly is what your name is, why you're worth knowing, what you do, and why that's worth doing, and how to find you. And those, if you can get that in an elevator pitch, who you are, why you're worth knowing, what your value is, you know, what your organization's value proposition is, and how they can find you, that's about it. That's about all you have time for. Sometimes you're lucky enough you step outside of the quote elevator and someone spends a little more time. But if you can really get those top 3 in, because that's really the only time you have, you've done more than most. Do not frivolously waste, like I said, don't waste that time by saying, wow, we're so busy. There's so much more need out there. Those are 2 obvious statements you didn't have to make. When you could have said, my name's Diane McKay. I work at the community colleges. We have so many students that need scholarships this year. You really should consider looking into one of our foundations.
Fantastic. So Ray has posed the final and the $64 million question of, are there any foundations giving specific COVID-19 grants? And I'm going to invite those who are all on the call still to kind of crowdsource this. Any insight from you, Jess or Diane, Emily, Christiana?
Emily should jump in on this one, and you know, certainly VCCF.
Mm-hmm.
There are some great organizations that are out there. So I'm gonna, like, VCCF came to mind for me right away.
Yep.
But I know there are others.
The Santa Barbara Foundation and United Way in Santa Barbara also have rapid response funds that are funding various aspects. And you want to maybe talk a little bit about the work at EDC?
And one more thing though, is even credit unions and banks, I've seen a lot of notices go out, and even just like from a print shop that we worked with, just sent out a letter saying, if you're having trouble making your payments, call us, let us know, we can help you. I know that credit unions very often give mortgage relief, you know, just to defer payments to their members. So I think that just making the connection with the people they work with, that there's a lot of help available they may not know. With that, Emily, I'll give it to you, Emily.
Yeah, the grantors that you mentioned are the ones that are on top of my mind, and the real answer is it changes every single day. And what we've watched happen a number of times is our funders are completely overwhelmed with applications, and there are so many more applications than funds available. So my recommendation is the same as my recommendation with the PPP program. Just apply. And so, you know, get your name in the queue, get those funders aware of the work that you're doing and why it's important. That way, when additional funds come down, you'll at least be in line. Separately, we're doing a lot of work at the EDC with nonprofit organizations. So they can help you with the PPP application. It's the payroll protection program.
I think that's what that third
which
P
is available.
It used to be PPA, now it's PPP, so I don't know.
Yeah, PPP. So PPP, and again, funds are exhausted on PPP, but we expect Congress to approve more. But that's available to C3s and C19s, I think, but not C6s. And then there's also the EIDL economic injury disaster loan from the SBA. Again, those funds are exhausted. However, definitely get your name in the queue for when those funds come back. And that the EIDL loan is available to C6s.
And the other one, if you have, by chance, if you have an SBA mortgage already for 401k, I'm not 401k, getting my numbers mixed up, but if you pay an SBA mortgage loan right now or rent, there's 6 months forgiveness to fill out a piece of paper because it's usually auto withdrawal from your bank. You just have to stop the auto withdrawal for 6 months and it's automatic. It's one piece of paper to fill out if you happen to have an SBA loan on the building that you are in. And a lot of people don't know that that help exists. So, and this was the thing I was talking with from Point Broadcasting, which is Gold Coast Broadcasting, High Desert. But they just sent out a really nice letter that they just said, we understand that difficult times are everywhere. It's difficult. Business has slowed. If you should need any assistance with making payment arrangements, please reach out to us so we can help. And I know we're considering it the same thing at Mustang. We were lucky enough to get a PPP funded loan right away, and we're not as busy as we were. So Jess has been working really hard on a package, something we don't normally do, which is work for some smaller companies, smaller nonprofits, to help them, because we want that SBA loan to keep our designers busy. We don't want to put it in our pockets, and we don't want to pay our designers and not have them 100% busy. It's my dream to use that loan for our community right now when some of our regular customers are not as busy as they might be. We want to help them too, but we also want to help some of the people that we often can't help. Because for me, that money is about paying Mustang's employees. And so I want to pay them and I want them to be busy. And if I don't have enough money to do that, enough business to do that right now, I want to help the community with it. And I hope that more people consider that if they get that funding, because it is the way that funding can trickle down and help other people.
Fantastic. And I would say a note on the grant process too, is even if there isn't a grant available now or you're still waiting, in this time, you can start collecting information so that you have it ready when a grant does go live, so you can apply immediately. And you can probably assume they're going to ask you about your nonprofit, about the number of people you serve in your service area. And they may also ask, what's your specific request? How much money do you need? And what specifically is that going to be used for? Are you asking for $11,000 because you expect that you're going to have 125 new clients a month and that will support you for 6 additional months? Kind of start having all of that information pooled now so that when a grant application does go live, you're not then trying to sit with your board and trying to collect all of this information and numbers. You have it easily in a Word doc and can just start, getting it in there and getting that through the pipeline as soon as possible.
It's a really great suggestion, Jeff.
I promise you that PPP loan was not just that little application that they sent out. I had to have mountains of paperwork behind that, bylaws, incorporation papers, officer proof of right to signature. I mean, I'd be happy to even share that list so that when that comes out again, you have all that paperwork gathered up. I'm sure there are other sites that have that by now, but most of us that got the money, we got in so early that the rest of those things got trickled to us. And so it was kind of frustrating. I felt like every day I had to come up with some new thing I had to dig up on the company. So again, happy to share that, but have all that information ready, because if they do change the rules a little bit on any of these grants, you just need all the historical data, who you've paid by 1099, if you have employees, who you've paid by 1099, who you've paid by W-2, what did their benefits cost, 401k, there's specific ways. I'm sitting through a webinar on Friday on the specific ways that your 401k can be used towards forgiveness. So lots and lots of information. The more you have ready to go, the faster you can apply for these loans.
Sure. I just pulled up my phone while we're wrapping up here, and it looks like Congress just reached the deal on the $450 billion while we were wrapping up. So,
yay!
But that also means it's going to be important to act fast. So.
Yes.
So I love Tim Hagel's Hero of the Day. I'm going to nominate both Diane and Jessica as our heroes for today. Ladies, thank you so much for sharing your counsel, your expertise, your moral support. It's really a real pleasure to spend the morning, and thank you so much for investing in all of us. As we wrap up, I'm also going to invite folks. We're going to be sharing our distribution list for a little bit of census outreach. If you would prefer that your email not be shared, please go ahead and put that in the chat box, or send me an email at djenson@callutheran.edu. A big thanks to Emily, Christiana, and Brianna from Visionality for making sure that we're creating robust learning communities in service to you all. I'm looking at the chat box again. It says, yay, our heroes. And yes, the recording will be available as soon as Zoom releases the file. It'll be coming from Visionality. So thank you once again, everyone. A real pleasure.
It's absolutely a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Everyone take good care, and take care of yourselves and each other.
Put on a mask.